The Price of Yesterday. Chapter 1. A Dangerous Leap. Dr. Emma Collins slams the switch, praying that the crackling surge of energy in her time machine won't backfire again. The lab fills with a sharp electric buzz as sparks dance along the sleek metallic surface of her creation. Shadows flicker across the sterile room cast by the pulsing glow of screens surrounding her. Emma steps back, feeling the raw power radiating from the machine she's spent years perfecting. Her hands tremble as she watches the time machine pulse with energy. Memories of countless failures and near implosions flood her mind, along with Lucas's persistent warnings. Emma's breath catches in her throat, fear and hope colliding in a dizzying rush. This time, she tells herself, it will work. Today is the day I save David. But deep down, a part of her still fears the unknown, the dangers Lucas tried so hard to make her see. A vivid memory flashes unbidden. The night David died. Blinding headlights, screeching tires, the final look on his face before everything went dark. Emma squeezes her eyes shut, willing the image away, but it lingers, threatening to overwhelm her. The accident was so sudden, so senseless. Guilt gnaws at her, ever present. She shakes her head violently, forcing herself to focus on the present, on her chance to rewrite that terrible moment. The hidden lab is a stark contrast to the quiet suburban neighborhood above. Cold, sterile, and humming with advanced technology, it's a world apart from the modest home that serves as its shield. Thick metallic walls conceal the reality-altering experiments that have consumed Emma's life for the past 2 years. No one above suspects that beneath the unassuming house lies a marvel of science. A time machine that defies the very laws of nature. Emma circles the device, checking data readouts and ensuring every component functions as it should. The machine is an intricate blend of cutting-edge quantum mechanics and retrofitted engineering, a complex web of wires, consoles, and a glowing central core, but she knows it's not perfect. Despite her best efforts, a glitch remains, one she couldn't quite fix. It's minor, she tells herself. It won't affect the jump. But uncertainty gnaws at her, the risks of rewriting the past looming large in her mind. Her fingers hover over the activation button. The weight of her decision presses down on her, making each breath a struggle. Every fibre of her being screams to press it, to take this chance, but Lucas's warnings ring in her ears. Tampering with time isn't safe, Emma. You could change things you don't even realize. Her heart races, but then she pictures David, the man she lost, the future they should have had. Grief and love push her forward, overriding logic and fear. Just as her hand moves toward the button, the lab door slides open with a metallic hiss. Dr. Lucas Chen strides in, his face a mix of urgency and frustration. "Emma, stop! You're making a huge mistake." His voice is sharp, a rare show of emotion from the usually calm scientist. Emma whirls to face him, her expression hardened by grief. "I can't lose him again, Lucas. I won't." "You don't know what you're risking," Lucas pleads, approaching the console. "The glitches, the dangerous outcomes, we've seen what altering the past can do in our simulations." "Simulations aren't reality," Emma snaps. "I've triple-checked everything. It will work this time." Lucas shakes his head, his eyes filled with concern. "Your obsession has clouded your judgment. You're risking not just your life, but the entire timeline. Changing one moment could ripple through the future in ways we can't predict." "I don't care about the timeline," Emma's voice breaks. "I care about David, about fixing the mistake that ruined my life." "And what if saving him causes something worse?" Lucas argues. "What if—" Emma cuts him off, her voice low and dangerous. "Nothing could be worse than losing him." Lucas takes a deep breath, trying a different approach. "Emma, I know you're hurting, but this isn't the way. David wouldn't want you to risk everything like this." "Don't you dare tell me what David would want," Emma hisses. "You didn't know him like I did." "No, but I know you," Lucas says softly. "The Emma I know, the brilliant scientist I've worked with for years. She wouldn't take a risk like this. Not without being absolutely certain." For a moment, doubt flickers across Emma's face, but then she steels herself, turning back to the machine. I am certain that I can't live with myself if I don't try. Emma, please, Lucas makes one final plea. Just step away from the machine. We can talk about this. Find another way. But Emma is done listening. She moves toward the time machine with purposeful strides, her hands steady now, resolve unshakable. Lucas lunges forward, trying to stop her, but he's too late. Emma slams the activation button. Instantly, the room is flooded with blinding white light. The machine roars louder than ever before, and Emma feels the floor beneath her feet vibrate violently. Lucas shouts something, but his words are drowned out by the deafening hum. Emma's last thought before the jump is of David's face. She prays she made the right decision. Time warps around her. The lab's walls bend and twist as she's pulled through the quantum tunnel. Colours blur into a kaleidoscopic whirl, and for a moment that stretches into eternity, Emma feels like she's floating in an endless void. A sharp jolt slams her back into reality. Emma's eyes fly open and she finds herself standing on a familiar street 2 years in the past. Her heart pounds as she looks around, disoriented. It worked. The machine actually worked. She's here moments before David's fatal accident. The street is quiet, eerily so, but Emma knows she doesn't have much time. Her eyes dart around, searching for landmarks. There, the old maple tree on the corner. And there, Mrs. Henderson's garish pink mailbox. This is the spot. This is where it happens. A car engine rumbles in the distance, growing louder. Emma's breath catches in her throat. David. As his car approaches the intersection, Emma springs into action. Her legs carry her forward before her mind can catch up, sprinting toward the road. She reaches it just in time to see the truck. The one that was supposed to crash into David's car, barreling forward, its driver distracted. Time seems to slow. Emma throws herself into the street, waving her arms frantically. David! She screams. Stop! Stop! Tires screech against asphalt. David's car skids to a halt mere inches from where Emma stands. The truck swerves wildly, its horn blaring. For a heart-stopping moment, Emma thinks it's going to hit them both, but at the last second it veers away, missing them by a hair's breadth. Emma collapses to the ground, gasping for breath. She did it. She actually did it. She saved him. As the dust settles, Emma looks up to see David's confused but very much alive face peering out from the driver's side window. Relief washes over her in a dizzying wave. He's here. He's safe. She changed it. But as the adrenaline fades, something feels off. Emma slowly pushes herself to her feet, looking around. The world seems different somehow. Colours are slightly muted, shadows longer than they should be. A chill runs down her spine that has nothing to do with the near-miss accident. She tries to brush it off as leftover adrenaline, the natural disorientation of time travel. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispers that something has already changed. The glitch Lucas warned her about, what if it wasn't as minor as she thought? David's car door opens and he steps out, concern etched on his face. Are you all right? He asks, reaching out to steady her. What were you thinking, running into the street like that? Emma stares at him, drinking in the sight of him alive and whole. She wants to throw her arms around him, to tell him everything, but she can't, not yet. I saw the truck coming, she manages. I couldn't let it hit you. David's brow furrows. You saved my life, he says slowly, as if trying to process it. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here. I do, Emma thinks, her heart clenching, but she forces a smile. I'm just glad you're okay. As David continues to thank her, Emma's attention is drawn to their surroundings once more. The wrongness she sensed earlier persists, growing stronger. The air feels heavier, charged with an energy she can't explain, and in the distance, just at the edge of her vision, she swears she sees a flicker, like reality itself is wavering. Emma's triumph mixes with a growing sense of unease. She saved David, yes, but at what cost? What changes has she set in motion? As she looks at the man she loves, alive because of her actions, Emma can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. The consequences of her desperate gamble are already unfolding, rippling outward in ways she can't yet comprehend. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Lucas's warnings echo, a grim reminder of the price that comes with defying the laws of time. Chapter 2. Fragments of David. Emma steps out of her lab into the altered present, a strange sense of relief washing over her. David is alive. She saved him, but as she moves through their home, something feels off. The familiar warmth between them seems to have vanished, replaced by an inexplicable distance. She finds David in the living room, his attention fixed on a book. "Hey," Emma says, her voice tentative. "How was your day?" David looks up, and for a moment it's as if he's seeing a stranger. His smile feels forced, lacking the easy affection she remembers. "Oh, hey Emma, it was fine, just working on some blueprints for the new project." Emma frowns. David's casual remarks don't align with the man she knew. He'd always shared the details of his work with enthusiasm, drawing her into his world of engineering marvels. Now, his words fall flat, devoid of passion. "Remember that time you showed me the designs for the bridge in Singapore?" Emma probes, searching for a spark of recognition. "You were so excited about the innovative support structure." David's brow furrows. He pauses as if struggling to recall. "Singapore? I'm not sure I remember that project." Emma's heart sinks. That project had been a defining moment in David's career, something he'd talked about for months. How could he not remember? As the days pass, Emma notices more unsettling changes in David's behaviour. Their inside jokes fall flat, met with blank stares instead of laughter. When she mentions their first date at the quirky science museum, David nods along, but his eyes are vacant, lacking the warmth of shared memories. One evening, as they prepare dinner, Emma says, "Hey, can you pass me the cumin? You know I can't make your mum's curry without it." David hands her the spice container, then pauses. "My mum's curry? I didn't know she had a special recipe." Emma nearly drops the jar. David's mother's curry had been a staple in their household, a recipe passed down through generations. It was more than food. It was a connection to family, to tradition. And now, in David's eyes, it might as well never have existed. She stares at the man before her, his familiar face now a mask for someone she doesn't recognize. Did she truly save the man she loved, or has she brought back a hollow facsimile? Unable to bear the growing chasm between them, Emma retreats to her lab. She dives into the data from the time jump, frantically running calculations. The more she analyzes the numbers, the more she realizes something has gone horribly wrong. Subtle glitches ripple through her data, anomalies that shouldn't exist. Emma replays footage from the machine's launch, her eyes catching brief, untraceable distortions in the quantum core. Each new piece of information sends a chill down her spine. A news alert on her computer draws her attention. Reports of strange occurrences around town flash across the screen. A series of minor accidents on Main Street, inexplicable bursts of static electricity causing small fires, and erratic behaviour from usually calm residents. Emma's hands shake as she closes the browser. The timeline isn't just altered, it's unstable. Late into the night, as Emma pores over her findings, a strange crackling sound fills the air above her. The lights flicker, casting eerie shadows across her workstation. Her heart racing, Emma pulls up the security footage from outside the house. At first glance, the neighbourhood appears normal. But as she watches, a door across the street slowly closes on its own, despite the absence of wind. Emma leans closer to the screen, her breath catching in her throat. The crackling returns, louder this time. A creeping sensation of being watched washes over her. Emma whirls around, expecting to see someone or something behind her. But the room is empty, save for the humming equipment and her own ragged breathing. The atmosphere grows thick with tension. Emma's paranoia intensifies, her mind racing with possibilities. What else has she unleashed by meddling with time? Morning brings no relief. Emma walks through the neighbourhood, observing the once familiar streets with growing unease. The cheerful faces of her neighbours are gone, replaced by vacant stares and stilted movements. She approaches Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman she used to chat with about gardening. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. Your roses are looking lovely this year." Mrs. Henderson turns, her eyes unfocused. "Roses? Yes, I suppose they are." Her voice is flat, emotionless. She doesn't even seem to recognize Emma. As Emma continues her walk, the wrongness of it all presses in on her. The very air feels thinner, as if reality itself is stretched to its breaking point. How far have the ripples of her time meddling spread? Desperate for answers, or at least someone who might understand, Emma seeks out Lucas Chen at his lab. She finds him hunched over a computer, his face drawn with worry. "Lucas," Emma says, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you. It's about the time jump." Lucas's head snaps up, his eyes widening. "You didn't—" Emma nods, the words tumbling out. "I did it. I completed the jump. I saved David." Lucas is on his feet in an instant, his face contorted with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouts, slamming his hands on the desk. "You've violated every scientific and ethical principle we worked so hard to uphold." "I had to save him, Lucas," Emma fires back. "You don't understand." "No, you are the one who don't understand." Lucas cuts her off. "Look around you, Emma. Strange things are happening all over town. The timeline is destabilizing, and it's all because of your reckless actions." Their argument escalates, filling the lab with accusations and regrets. Lucas demands that Emma fix her mistake, but she can't bring herself to undo David's salvation, even as guilt gnaws at her. "I did it for David," Emma insists, her voice cracking. "I couldn't just let him die." Lucas's eyes narrow. "And what about everyone else? What about the consequences to the entire world? Did you even think about that?" As Emma turns to leave, Lucas grabs her arm, his grip tight with desperation. "You can't walk away from this, Emma. You have to fix it." Something in Emma snaps. She shoves Lucas back, hard enough to send him stumbling. "Don't touch me," she shouts. Lucas regains his balance, his face flushed with anger. Tampering with the timeline could unravel everything we know. Everything. The tension between them reaches a boiling point. In a moment of raw emotion, Emma's hand flies out, striking Lucas across the face. The sharp crack of the slap echoes through the lab, leaving them both stunned. Tears well in Emma's eyes as she backs away. "I'll fix this," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I'll do it on my own." She storms out of the lab, Lucas's final warning ringing in her ears. The more you try to fix it, the worse it could get. Back in her own lab, Emma tries to focus on the data, searching for a solution. But her concentration shatters as another strange event unfolds. A picture frame on the wall, a photo of her and David on their wedding day, suddenly falls, the glass shattering on the floor. Emma jumps, her heart pounding. There was no reason for it to fall. No tremor, no breeze, just the unsettling silence of a reality coming undone. A chill runs down her spine as the sense of being watched intensifies. Emma's eyes dart to the clock on the wall, only to see the digital display flicker and jump as if losing time. Outside, a cacophony of barking erupts. It sounds like every dog in the neighborhood is howling at once. Emma rushes to the window, throwing it open. But as suddenly as it started, the noise stops. The street is eerily quiet, not a single dog in sight. Emma slumps against the wall, her mind reeling. The fabric of reality seems to be bending around her, reacting to her presence in ways she can't comprehend. As night falls, Emma's computer pings with a series of news alerts. Her hands shake as she reads the reports. Sudden sinkholes appearing in the center of town, odd electrical surges causing widespread power outages and an alarming increase in erratic behavior among residents. These are not isolated incidents. The timeline is unraveling faster than Emma could have ever predicted. She realizes, with growing horror, that her actions have set off a chain reaction that's altering reality beyond her control. Emma redoubles her efforts, poring over data and running simulation after simulation. She needs to stabilize the timeline, but how? Each potential solution seems to create more problems, like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. As the night wears on, Emma uncovers a devastating truth. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she double-checks the results, praying she's made a mistake. But the data is clear. undeniable in its cruel logic. No matter what she does, David is destined to die. The car accident wasn't just a random tragedy, it was a fixed point in time, immutable and inevitable. By saving David from that fate, Emma has set off a series of events that will lead to an even worse outcome. With shaken hands, Emma pulls up the simulation results. In just a few days, David will be involved in a catastrophic industrial accident at his work site. The details are gruesome, far more painful and drawn out than the quick end he would have met in the car crash. The weight of her actions crashes down on Emma. By saving David, she's doomed him to an even more horrific death. And worse, her presence in the past is directly responsible for this new, crueler fate. Emma collapses into her chair, staring blankly at the data on her screen. She's trapped in the nightmare she tried so hard to avoid. The guilt is suffocating, pressing in on her from all sides. In her desperation to save David, she's condemned him to a crueler fate. And not just David, the entire world seems to be unraveling because of her actions. Emma realizes that no matter how many times she tries to fix the timeline, David's death is inevitable. It's as if the universe itself is determined to correct her interference, no matter the cost. She begins to question whether there's any way out or if she's doomed to repeat this cycle of grief and loss forever. The time machine, once a beacon of hope, now looms in the corner of her lab like a malevolent presence, a constant reminder of her hubris. As the days pass, David becomes increasingly distant and erratic. The loving, supportive husband Emma remembers is gone, replaced by a cold, almost robotic version of himself. One evening, Emma finds David standing motionless in the kitchen, staring out the window. His eyes are vacant, unfocused, as if he's looking at something far beyond the quiet suburban street. "David?" Emma says softly, approaching him. "Is everything okay?" He doesn't respond at first, doesn't even seem to register her presence. When he finally turns to face her, his expression is blank, devoid of any real emotion. "I'm fine," he says, his voice flat and lifeless. "Just thinking." "About what?" Emma probes, desperate for any connection to the man she once knew. David's brow furrows slightly as if he's struggling to form a coherent thought. "I'm not sure," he admits. "It's all hazy." Emma's heart sinks. The man she saved is slipping away, fading like a photograph left too long in the sun. And she knows, with a certainty that chills her to her core, that it's only a matter of time before the timeline claims him in some other, more horrifying way. As David turns back to the window, Emma retreats to her lab, tears stinging her eyes. The countdown to David's new, terrible fate ticks away in her mind, a constant reminder of her failure. She stares at the time machine, the instrument of her downfall. Was it worth it? All the years of work, the sacrifices, the ethical lines crossed, all to end up here in a world coming apart at the seams, with the man she loves reduced to a shadow of himself. Emma's hand hovers over the machine's control panel. She could try again, make another jump, attempt to set things right, but Lucas's warning echoes in her mind. The more you try to fix it, the worse it could get. Outside, the sky darkens prematurely, as if night is falling hours too soon. A cold wind whips through the trees, carrying with it the faint sound of static electricity. The world Emma knew is slipping away second by second, and she's powerless to stop it. In the growing darkness, Emma faces the cruel truth. Some things are meant to be, no matter how much we wish otherwise. The laws of time and fate are not meant to be bent to human will, and now she and everyone she loves must pay the price for her arrogance. As the room around her seems to waver, reality bending like a funhouse mirror, Emma makes a decision. She can't undo what she's done, but perhaps she can still find a way to minimize the damage. With trembling hands, she begins to formulate a new plan, one that might save the world even if it means losing David all over again. The true cost of playing with time is becoming painfully clear, and as the fabric of reality continues to unravel around her, Emma realizes that her journey through the twisted corridors of time and fate has only just begun. Chapter 3. The Ghosts of Failure. Emma sits at her kitchen table, staring blankly at her laptop screen. The clock on the wall ticks loudly, each second a stark reminder that David's new fate is approaching. Guilt weighs on her like a physical force, threatening to crush her entirely. She can't remember the last time she slept properly, her mind an endless loop of decisions made and mistakes compounded. She rubs her eyes, bloodshot from staring at data for hours on end. The numbers mock her, each calculation a reminder of her failure. Emma's thoughts drift to Lucas, his warnings echoing in her mind. She should have listened. Now time is running out and the consequences of her actions loom larger with each passing moment. "I did this," Emma whispers to the empty room. "I thought I could control it, but I've only made everything worse." The sense of doom tightens around her, a noose of her own making. Emma's breath comes in short, sharp gasps as the reality of her situation threatens to overwhelm her. She's running out of time, out of options, out of hope. Desperate for air, Emma stumbles out of the house and into the neighborhood. But the world outside offers no comfort. The sky hangs low and oppressive, darker than it should be at this hour. The air feels thick, almost viscous, as if reality itself is congealing around her. Houses that once stood proudly now loom over Emma, their windows like accusatory eyes. Shadows stretch unnaturally long, reaching for her with inky tendrils. A chill runs down her spine as she notices her neighbours, people she's known for years, averting their gazes, their faces twist in expressions of fear or cold indifference as they hurry past. Mrs. Henderson, once so friendly, now huddles on her porch, her eyes wide with terror as Emma passes. "It's not right," the old woman mutters, clutching her robe tight. "You've brought something wicked here." Emma quickens her pace, her heart pounding. The streets seem to shift and buckle beneath her feet, as if the very earth is trying to throw her off balance. Reality warps around her, bending like a funhouse mirror. Is this real? Emma wonders aloud, her voice thin and reedy in the heavy air. Or am I losing my mind? A car drives by, its engine sounding distorted and wrong, like metal grinding against itself. The driver, a man Emma doesn't recognize, glares at her with eyes that seem too dark, too empty. The universe is rejecting her presence, Emma realizes. Her tampering with time has made her an anomaly, something to be expunged. The thought sends a wave of nausea through her, and she stumbles back toward her house, toward the illusory safety of her lab. Back in the sterile confines of her workspace, Emma throws herself into the data once more. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, running simulation after simulation. But the numbers remain stubbornly unchanged. David's new death looms just days away, an industrial accident that seems as unavoidable as it is horrific. Emma pulls up the security footage from David's workplace, studying every detail. She watches him move through the factory, noting his interactions, the machinery around him. There has to be a way to prevent it, some variable she can change to alter the outcome. But every attempt she makes to tweak the timeline leads to more complications. Save David from one piece of falling equipment and he steps into the path of another. Delay his arrival at work and the accident grows in scale, claiming more lives. It's as if fate itself is conspiring against her. "Why?" Emma cries out, slamming her fist on the desk. "Why can't I fix this?" The glitch in her time machine, the flaw she thought she could control, proves to be far more insidious than she ever imagined. It's not just a bug in the system, it's a fundamental instability in the fabric of time itself, and she's the one who created it. As night falls, strange phenomena begin to manifest with increasing frequency. Emma's phone buzzes incessantly, but when she checks it, the screen is filled with distorted, unreadable messages. Garbled voices emerge from the static, speaking words she can't quite make out. The power in the house flickers erratically, casting eerie shadows that seem to move of their own accord. Emma catches her reflection in a mirror and freezes. For a moment, her reflection stares back with an expression she doesn't recognize, cold, calculating, almost cruel. She blinks and it's gone, but the unease lingers. In the dead of night, when the house should be silent, Emma hears whispers. Faint, disjointed voices that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. She strains to make out the words, but they remain just beyond comprehension, a maddening susurration that sets her nerves on edge. "Stop it," Emma hisses, pressing her hands to her ears. "This isn't real. It can't be real." But the whispers persist, and with them comes a bone-deep certainty. The world is pushing back against her. The timeline itself is trying to expel her, to erase the anomaly she's become. Emma's very existence has become an affront to the natural order. Desperate for any solution, Emma throws herself into a frantic search through her lab. She digs through old files, scatters papers across the floor, hoping against hope to find something, anything that might help. Her hand brushes against an old notebook, its cover worn and faded. Emma recognizes it instantly. It belongs to Lucas. With trembling fingers, she opens it, and her breath catches in her throat. There, scrawled in Lucas's precise handwriting, is a formula. A method to stabilize the core of the time machine, potentially fixing the glitch that's causing the timeline to unravel. Emma's heart races as she reads through the calculations. "Why did he shelve this?" she mutters, flipping through the pages. The answer becomes clear as she delves deeper into Lucas's notes. The formula was too risky, too untested. The potential for catastrophic failure was high enough that even Lucas, ever the optimist, had deemed it too dangerous to pursue. But for Emma, teetering on the brink of losing everything, it's a lifeline, a last desperate chance to undo the damage she's caused. "It's too risky," she says to herself, echoing Lucas's concerns. But then she looks at the clock, counting down the hours until David's new fate. But what choice do I have? With renewed determination, Emma throws herself into the task of recalibrating the time machine. She works tirelessly, barely stopping to eat or rest, driven by the slim chance that this could finally solve everything. Hours blur together as Emma inputs the new parameters into the system. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, making adjustments, fine-tuning the calculations. And then, just as exhaustion threatens to overtake her, something changes. The data begins to make sense. The chaotic swirl of numbers and equations starts to align, forming patterns she can understand. The glitch, that maddening instability at the heart of her machine, seems to stabilize. "It's working!" Emma breathes, hardly daring to believe it. "It's actually working." For the first time in days, a flicker of hope ignites in her chest. Emma allows herself a small moment of triumph, a brief respite from the crushing guilt and fear. Perhaps this will be enough. Perhaps she can undo her reckless decisions, set things right. But before she can run a full test on the newly stabilized machine, the temperature in the lab plummets. Emma's breath fogs in the suddenly frigid air, and the lights overhead begin to flicker violently. A crackling sound fills the room like static electricity gone mad. Emma turns, her heart pounding, and freezes. There, standing in the shadows, is a figure. But not just any figure, it's her, or rather a twisted, distorted version of herself. The other Emma steps forward and Emma recoils. This version of her is gaunt, haunted. Her face is a mask of anguish and rage, eyes burning with an intensity that borders on madness. When she speaks, her voice is a guttural whisper that sends chills down Emma's spine. "You!" the distorted Emma hisses. "You've ruined everything." Emma backs away, her mind reeling. This can't be real, it has to be another hallucination, another trick of her overtaxed mind. But the other Emma advances, all too solid, all too present. What are you?" Emma manages to ask, her voice trembling. The distorted Emma's laugh is a harsh, broken sound. "I'm you, I'm what you become, I'm the consequence of your arrogance." With that, the shadowy figure lunges forward. Emma barely has time to react before they collide, the impact sending them both crashing into a table full of equipment. Glass shatters, metal screeches against the floor, and Emma finds herself locked in a struggle that's as much psychological as it is physical. "Stop!" Emma cries out, trying to push the other version of herself away. "This isn't real!" But the alternate Emma is relentless. Her hands, cold as ice, grip Emma's arms with bruising force. "Isn't it?" she snarls. "You created this reality. You broke time itself with your hubris." They grapple across the lab, knocking over chairs and sending papers flying. Emma's mind races, trying to make sense of what's happening. Is this some manifestation of the timeline's instability? A physical representation of the damage she's caused. The distorted Emma slams her against a wall, leaning in close. Her breath is cold, lifeless. "You're the reason David is going to die again," she hisses. "You're the reason this world is falling apart." Emma's resolve crumbles under the weight of those words. She stumbles back, feeling utterly defeated. The accusations cut deep because she knows, in her heart, that they're true. She has no defense, no way to justify the catastrophe she's caused. Guilt crashes over her in waves, threatening to drown her. The shadowy figure's presence grows stronger, feeding off Emma's despair. For a moment, Emma considers giving in, letting this twisted version of herself take over. After all, hasn't she proven that she's unfit to wield the power she's created? But something in Emma rebels against that thought. Through the haze of guilt and fear, a spark of defiance ignites. She looks at the distorted version of herself, really looks, and suddenly understands. This isn't just an alternate version of her from some doomed future. It's a manifestation of her guilt, her obsession with controlling time. The figure's power is tied to Emma's emotional state, feeding on her fear and regret. With this realization comes a surge of willpower. Emma straightens, meeting the gaze of her shadowy counterpart. "I can fix this," she says, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I made mistakes, but I can make it right." The distorted Emma snarls, lunging forward again. But this time, Emma stands her ground. She doesn't fight back with violence, but with sheer force of will. She refuses to let this manifestation of her worst self win. "I acknowledge my mistakes," Emma says, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. "But I won't let guilt destroy me. I won't become you." The lab goes silent, the temperature slowly returning to normal. The distorted version of Emma wavers, like a mirage in the desert. For a moment their eyes meet, and Emma sees a flicker of something. Regret? Relief? Then with a sound like a sigh, the shadowy figure vanishes into the void. Emma collapses to the floor, her body shaking with exhaustion and residual fear. The lab is in ruins around her, equipment scattered and broken. But the silence is almost worse than the chaos of the fight. In the quiet, the weight of what just happened presses down on her. She sits there on the cold floor, trembling as the realization sinks in. The distorted version of herself wasn't just a manifestation, it was a warning. A glimpse of what she could become if she continues down this path of reckless time manipulation. Emma's hands shake as she faces the sobering truth. Every action she's taken, every attempt to fix her mistakes, has only worsened the situation. The timeline isn't just unstable, it's actively fighting against her interventions, and the more she tries to fix things, the more damage she's doing. "What have I done?" Emma whispers to the empty lab. The question hangs in the air, unanswered and damning. She looks at the time machine, the device she once saw as her salvation. Now it looms over her, a monument to her hubris. Emma realizes with a sickening clarity that she's trapped in a loop of her own making. Every attempt to save David, to correct the timeline, only pushes her further down a path of destruction. The enormity of her actions crashes down on her. It's not just David's life at stake anymore. It's not even just her own reality. Her meddling with time has created ripples that threaten to become tidal waves, endangering countless lives across multiple timelines. Emma's mind races, searching for a solution. But for the first time, she's forced to confront the possibility that there might not be one. At least not one that doesn't require an unthinkable sacrifice. As the first light of dawn creeps through the lab windows, Emma makes a decision. She can't keep going like this, blindly grasping at fixes that only make things worse. She needs to step back, to look at the bigger picture, and she needs help. With shaking hands, Emma reaches for her phone. She hesitates for a moment, then dials a number she knows by heart. It rings once, twice, and then a familiar voice answers. "Lucas," Emma says, her voice cracking, "I need your help. I've made a terrible mistake." The silence on the other end of the line stretches for what feels like an eternity. Then Lucas speaks, his voice a mix of concern and resignation. "I'll be right there," he says. "Don't do anything until I arrive." As Emma ends the call, she looks around the destroyed lab. The evidence of her battle with herself, both literal and figurative, is everywhere. She doesn't know if she can fix what she's broken, doesn't know if the damage she's done to time itself can ever be repaired. But as she waits for Lucas, a small, fragile hope takes root. She's done trying to control time. Now she just wants to set things right, whatever the cost. The path forward is uncertain, fraught with danger. But for the first time since this all began, Emma feels like she's taking a step in the right direction. The clock on the wall continues its relentless ticking, counting down to a future Emma can no longer predict. But as she takes a deep breath, steadying herself for what's to come, she makes a silent promise to David, to the world she's endangered, and to herself. "I'll find a way," she whispers. "I'll make this right." And in the growing light of a new day, Emma prepares to face the consequences of her actions, ready at last to confront the true cost of playing with time. Chapter 4. The Final Paradox. Emma stands in her lab, surrounded by the wreckage of her last confrontation. The time machine hums ominously in the background, a constant reminder of her failures. She's at her lowest point, the weight of her actions crushing down on her. David's new death looms imminent, the world around her feels alien, twisted by her meddling with time. Even Lucas, her one constant, has cut ties with her. Emma can barely trust her own perception of reality anymore. As the final hours of David's life approach, Emma contemplates giving up. She slumps into her chair, staring blankly at the monitors displaying the countdown to the industrial accident that will claim David's life. Again. "What's the point?" Emma mutters, her voice hollow in the empty lab. "I can't save him. I can't save anyone." The lights flicker violently as if in response to her despair. Without warning, the temperature in the room plummets. An eerie stillness descends, broken only by the soft hum of the time machine. Out of the shadows, a figure materializes. Emma's breath catches in her throat as she recognizes the gaunt face, the hollowed eyes. It's her, but not her. An older version, worn down by years of torment. "You thought you could change the past without consequences?" Alternate Emma's voice, low and strained, cuts through the silence like a knife. Emma stands frozen, unable to process what she's seeing. The older version of herself steps forward, her movements slow and deliberate, as if weighed down by years of regret. "You failed," Alternate Emma says bitterly. "You tried to save him, but all you did was destroy everything." Each word is laced with venom, a stark reminder of the price Emma has already paid, and will continue to pay if she persists in her actions. Emma takes in the appearance of her older self, and it's like looking into a nightmarish mirror. Alternate Emma's once vibrant hair is now dull, streaked with grey. Deep lines of stress and anguish etch her face. She wears a torn, lab-worn coat, a symbol of relentless struggle against time itself, but it's the eyes that truly unsettle Emma. Once sharp and calculating, they now carry a deadened, detached look. It's the gaze of someone who has long since given up on finding redemption. What happened to you?" Emma manages to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Alternate Emma's laugh is harsh, devoid of any real mirth. "You happened, or rather we happened. Our obsession, our arrogance, our inability to let go." She steps closer and Emma instinctively backs away. "You think you're doing this for love? For David?" Alternate Emma spits, her voice rising. "All you've done is create suffering. Every timeline you touch falls apart. You ruined everything because you couldn't let go." Emma shakes her head, trying to deny the accusations. But Alternate Emma presses on, recounting an endless loop of failed attempts to change the past, each more disastrous than the last. "Stop," Emma pleads, but her older self is relentless. "You need to hear this," Alternate Emma growls. "This conversation, It's happened before, many times. Each time you manipulate the timeline, it fractures in different ways, creating new versions of us, trapped in endless loops of guilt and despair. The revelation hits Emma like a tsunami. She stumbles back, gripping the edge of her desk for support. "That's impossible," she whispers. "Is it?" Alternate Emma's voice is hollow. "I've lived through hundreds of timelines, trying to fix what you broke, but there's no fixing it. Every time you try to save him, something worse happens." Emma's mind races, grasping for a solution. "There has to be a way," she argues. "If we can stabilize the timeline, maybe we can—" "Hope," Alternate Emma scoffs, cutting her off. "Hope is a lie you tell yourself to justify your recklessness." She lays out cold, hard facts about the chaos that follows every time jump, tearing apart Emma's rationalizations. The tension between them escalates, a battle of intellects. Emma insists that there must be a way to fix things without causing further damage. But alternate Emma's once keen mind has been dulled by bitterness and countless failures. "You don't understand," Emma says, desperation creeping into her voice. "I can't just give up. David dies," alternate Emma interrupts, her voice sharp. "In every timeline. Sometimes in the crash, sometimes at work, sometimes because of something you did trying to save him, but he always dies." The words hang in the air, heavy with finality. Emma feels her resolve crumbling, but she can't accept it. Not yet. Suddenly, alternate Emma grabs her arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "I tried to stop you again and again," she growls, her voice filled with rage and despair. "But you never listen." Emma pulls away, but alternate Emma doesn't let go. The struggle between them intensifies. A fight for control. Not just over the physical space, but over the future itself. Every punch, every shove, is symbolic of the internal battle between hope and despair, determination and resignation. They grapple across the lab, knocking over equipment and scattering papers. Emma's mind races, trying to understand how she could become this bitter, angry version of herself. In a moment of stillness, alternate Emma's facade of anger cracks, revealing the deep regret that drives her. "I thought I could fix it too," she admits, her voice breaking. "But every time I tried, I just made things worse. David died in every timeline, but not always in the same way. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes it was his." The sorrow in her voice is so deep, so all-encompassing, that Emma feels it like a physical ache in her chest. For a moment, she sees herself in this broken version of herself, and it terrifies her. But the moment of vulnerability passes quickly. Alternate Emma's expression hardens once more, her bitterness warping her into someone ruthless and cold. "The only way to stop this madness is to destroy the time machine," she says, her tone final. "End it now before it's too late. You don't have the strength to keep going. You'll become like me, a hollow shell trapped in endless failures." She holds up a small advanced tool, offering it to Emma. "This will destroy the core permanently. It's the only way." Emma stares at the device, her hand trembling as she reaches for it, but at the last moment she pulls back. "No," she says, her voice stronger than she feels. "I won't become you. There's still a way. I just need more time." Alternate Emma's eyes narrow. "If you won't stop, then I will," she declares, moving towards the time machine. Emma's eyes widen in panic. She rushes to stop her older self, and they engage in a brutal, chaotic struggle. The time machine hums ominously in the background, its energy pulsing in response to the temporal paradox unfolding before it. As they fight, Emma realizes that this is more than just a battle with her future self. It's a battle against her own inner demons. The guilt, the obsession, the fear of letting go, they've all taken form in this twisted version of herself. Alternate Emma's fist connects with Emma's jaw, sending her stumbling back. "You can't win," she snarls. "I've lived this moment 1,000 times. I know every move you'll make." But as Emma regains her footing, something clicks in her mind. She stops fighting, letting her arms fall to her sides. "You're right," she says softly. "I can't win. Not like this." Alternate Emma pauses, confusion flickering across her face. What are you doing? I understand now, Emma continues, her voice growing stronger. You're not just another version of me. You're everything I'm afraid of becoming. You're my guilt, my regret, my fear of losing control. Alternate Emma lunges forward, but Emma doesn't flinch. You're not real, she says. You're a manifestation of my own mind, my own fears. As the words leave her mouth, Alternate Emma's form begins to waver like a mirage in the desert. No, she growls, but her voice sounds distant now. You can't just wish me away. The damage you've done is real, Emma finishes, and I have to take responsibility for it, but not like this, not by giving in to despair. Alternate Emma's form grows more transparent with each passing second. You'll regret this, she warns, her voice fading. You can't change what's coming. Maybe not, Emma agrees, but I can face it without you. With those words, Alternate Emma dissolves into shadows, leaving Emma alone in the lab once more. The silence is deafening, broken only by her ragged breathing and the soft hum of the time machine. Emma slumps to the floor, exhausted and shaken to her core. The battle has left her drained both physically and emotionally. But as she sits there, surrounded by the wreckage of her lab and her dreams, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time: clarity. She knows now that she can't keep trying to change the past. Every attempt only creates more fractures, more pain. The price is too high, not just for her, but for everyone touched by her actions. With nervous hands, Emma reaches for her phone. She hesitates for a moment, then dials a familiar number. Lucas, she says when he answers, her voice cracking. I need your help. It's time to end this. There's a long pause on the other end of the line. When Lucas finally speaks, his voice is a mix of relief and wariness. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't do anything until I arrive. As Emma ends the call, she looks at the time machine. Once she saw it as her salvation, her chance to right the greatest wrong in her life. Now she sees it for what it truly is, a monument to her hubris, a tool too dangerous for anyone to wield. She stands slowly, wincing at the aches from her fight with her alternate self. There's work to be done, hard choices to be made. But for the first time in years, Emma feels like she's on the right path. The world around her is still altered, warped by her meddling with time. But as she begins the process of dismantling the time machine, Emma realizes that she's ready to accept this new reality. It's not perfect, far from it, but it's real and it's hers to live in, not to constantly try to change. Hours pass as Emma and Lucas work in silence, methodically taking apart the machine that has consumed so much of their lives. As the last component is removed, Emma feels a weight lift from her shoulders. What now? Lucas asks, breaking the silence. Emma takes a deep breath. Now we move forward, it's all we can do. Just as they're finishing up, Emma notices an envelope on her desk that wasn't there before. Her heart skips a beat as she recognizes the handwriting on the front. David's handwriting. She reaches out for the envelope and opens it, unfolding a letter written just before David's original death. The message is brief, but it makes Emma's breath catch in her throat. My dear Emma, some things are meant to be. Remember that I love you, always. David. Emma stares at the letter, her mind reeling. How is this possible? Is this some final trick of the time machine or something more? She looks up at Lucas, who's watching her with concern. What is it? He asks. Emma shakes her head, unable to find the words to explain. She hands him the letter, watching as his eyes widen in surprise. How is this possible? Lucas begins, but Emma cuts him off. I don't know, she says, and maybe it's better that way. Some mysteries should remain unsolved. As they leave the lab, Emma takes one last look at the dismantled time machine. She thinks of David, of the life they had, and the future she once thought she could control. She thinks of her alternate self, a warning of what she could become if she doesn't let go. Emma steps out into the sunlight, feeling the warmth on her face. The world around her is still strange, still altered by her actions, but it's a world she's ready to face, without the crutch of time travel. Sometimes, Emma says softly, more to herself than to Lucas, the only way to move forward is to stop looking back. As they walk away from the lab, Emma feels a sense of peace she hasn't known in years. The future is uncertain, the consequences of her actions still unfolding. But for the first time since David's death, she's ready to face that future, whatever it may hold. The story of the time machine, of her desperate attempt to change the past, is over. But Emma's story, her journey of acceptance, of learning to live with loss and move forward, is just beginning. And as she takes her first steps into this new chapter of her life, Emma realizes that maybe, just maybe, this is the new beginning she's been searching for all along.